Welcome, detectives. My name is Jason Richards, Microsoft Technical Trainer and Data Detective. Dataflows Gen2 is a Fabric item that allows you to perform ETL, extract, transform, and load tasks using Power Query Online, which is a visual interface that makes data transformation easy and intuitive. What the heck are data flows? How do we use Power Query Online to create data flows? And how can I incorporate data flows into other Fabric items like pipelines? All great mysteries to solve. Gear up, detectives, we have a case to solve. Now imagine you're a data engineer working for a large company that has data stored in different formats and locations. You need to prepare the data for downstream analytics, but you don't want to write complex code or deal with multiple tools. You want a simple, reusable, and scalable solution that can handle any data source and any data destination. You want to use Dataflows Gen2 to solve this mystery. Data flows are a type of cloud-based extract, transform, and load tool for building and executing scalable data transformation processes. Dataflows Gen2 allows you to extract data from various sources, transform it using a wide range of transformation options, and load it into a destination. Using Power Query Online also allows for a visual interface to perform these tasks. Fundamentally, a data flow includes all the transformations to reduce data prep time and then can be loaded into a new table, included in a data pipeline, or used as a data source by data analysts. Dataflow Gen2, or Generation 2, is the new generation of data flows. The new generation of data flows resides alongside the Power BI data flow, Gen 1, and brings new features and improved experiences. The table shown here provides a comparison between the Generation 1 and Generation 2 data flows. Some major features to think about are the ability to select data destinations, as well as the integration of data pipelines. There's more than one way to ETL or ELT data in Microsoft Fabric, so be sure to consider the benefits and limitations for using Dataflows Gen2 before selecting them as an option. Traditionally, data engineers spend significant time extracting, transforming, and loading data into a consumable format for downstream analytics. The goal of Dataflows Gen2 is to provide an easy, reusable way to perform ETL tasks using Power Query Online. In order to create a data flow, you need to have a Microsoft Fabric-enabled workspace. Data flows are created through the Data Factory experience. From there, you should be able to create a new data flow item. For ETL processes, you can create a data flow Generation 2 first to extract and transform the data. Once your data is ready, you have options for using the data flow. Like you could load the data into a lakehouse so the business can easily consume the curated semantic model. You could add a data destination to your data flow, which is optional, and the data flow preserves all transformation steps. To perform other tasks or load data to different destination after the transformations, create a data pipeline and add the Dataflow Gen2 activity to your orchestration. Another option might be to use data pipeline and Dataflow Gen2 for extract, load, and transform, or ELT process. For this order, you'd use a pipeline to extract and load the data into your preferred destination, such as the lakehouse. Then you'd create a Dataflow Gen2 to connect to lakehouse data to cleanse and transform the data. In this case, you'd offer the data flow as a curated semantic model for data analysts to develop reports. Data flows can be horizontally partitioned as well. Once you create a global data flow, data analysts can use data flows to create specialized semantic models for specific needs. Data flows allow you to promote reusable ETL logic that prevents the need to create more connections to your data source. Data flows offer a wide variety of transformations and can be run manually, on a refresh schedule, or as part of a data pipeline orchestration. To create a data flow Generation 2 in Fabric, we use Power Query Online, a no/low code interface which allows not only hard-nosed coding proficient detectives, but also our detectives who understand the logical flow, but may not be able to be as coding proficient to perform transformations on data. So what elements can we expect to use in Power Query Online? Let's crack the case of interface interrogation. The first element of Power Query Online to discuss is the ribbon. If you're familiar with Microsoft software, the ribbon serves as a go-to for quick access to extracting and transformation options. A common use of the ribbon is to get data from sources that can include cloud and on-premises relational databases, Excel or flat files, SharePoint, Salesforce, Spark, and of course Fabric Lakehouses, just to highlight a few examples. Then there are numerous data transformation options possible, like filtering, sorting, pivoting, unpivoting, removing duplicates, merging queries, and the list goes on and on and on and on. There's a lot that you can do. Let's just put it that way. The Queries pane shows you the different data sources, now called queries. Some options for query formatting are renaming, duplicating, referencing, and enabling staging. The diagram view allows you to visually see how the data sources are connected and the different applied transformations. The data preview pane only shows a subset of the data to allow you to see which transformations you should make and how they affect the data. You can also interact with the preview pane by dragging and dropping columns to change order or right-clicking on columns to filter, to make changes, etc. The Query Settings pane primarily includes applied steps. Each transformation you do is tied to a step, some of which are automatically applied when you connect the data source. Depending on the complexity of the transformations, you may have several steps applied for each query. In the Query Settings pane, you can see a data destination field where you can set the lakehouse or other Fabric items as your destination. While this visual interface is helpful, you can also use the M code through the Advanced Editor. As detectives, we realize that we can rely on past cases to help us solve current cases. Same thing applies to data flows. Gone are the days where we would need to continuously perform the same ETL operations on raw data because of disparate systems that don't integrate. With Fabric, data that was enriched with data flows can be integrated with other Fabric experiences seamlessly. Let's look at an example in the case of the data flow pipeline partnership. The combination of data flows and pipelines is useful when you need to perform additional operations on your transformed data. Data pipelines are easily created in the data factory and data engineering workloads. Pipelines are a common concept in data engineering and offer a wide variety of activities to orchestrate. Some common activities include copying data, adding a notebook, executing a script or a stored procedure, and so much more. Pipelines provide a visual way to complete activities in a specific order. You can incorporate a data flow into a pipeline to orchestrate extra activities, like execute scripts or store procedures after the data flow is completed. In the example shown here, we're using a data flow to pull data into a pipeline, running a notebook to perform additional transformations, or machine learning possibly, then copying the data to a defined destination. And fear not, detectives, we'll explore pipelines further on another case. Time once again to log into the Detectolab 5000 and put knowledge to practice. Let's do some real investigation to unlock the mysteries of data flows. All right, back in the environment, and we are going to work with data flows in this one. So let's ingest data into our lakehouse utilizing a data flow. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, just show you I'm in my Data Detective workspace with the Fabric content, and I'm going to navigate into my lakehouse itself, and then I'm going to get data from here. I could do it from here, but I'm going to say new Dataflows Gen2 on this one. And this should open up Power Query for me. Now, where am I going to get this data from? I'm going to do this from a CSV file that I have, and I'm going to upload it. Now, I have the ability to create connections to different resources if I need to, but I'm just going to upload a file, and I'm going to load this from my local machine. And what this is going to do is it's going to upload this for me and create its own connection for me. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and click next, and it's going to parse through this data now and give me a preview of it. So I can tell that it's applying or inferring data type values to this, and also found the column names, which should have been the first row of the data set. So it did those for me. I can see that the preview looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and create this connection into my data flow. So a couple things that happen when we load data in. So it's going to connect to a source, and I've already mentioned that it's promoting the column, the first row as the column values, right? And then it also changed some column types. Maybe the original CSV had a different, or maybe it's because it's inferring the data types onto it, it changed column type values for that. So those are things that it did on its own just to load the data in and apply its own data types to it. So those show up on our applied steps. Now, going back to this is our Power Query Editor online. And if you're familiar with using Power Query Editor in Power BI, then this experience should look pretty familiar to you. Should seem pretty familiar. So we got our ribbon up at the top. We have our queries pane. So if I have different queries that I've provided, meaning different tables that I want to create out of this, then there's going to be applied steps that are applied to each one of these. So different sources, different table names that I want to bring in, I can always get that data and then bring it in here, change those steps to it as well. Because of that, then I can come in here and start merging or appending items or data from one to the other. I could perform join operations like full or inner joins to several different source connections. Just to give you an idea, these are some of the examples of the sources that I can create and pull data in from. Then we have our preview down here, our visual preview of the data, and I have the visual steps up here. So if I parse through this, I'll just give you an example. I'm not going to do too much to this data set, but I can always come up here and remove columns. If I highlight a column, it may give me some options to do this, but I can also right click on it. And let's just say I remove this column just to show you what happens. It's going to remove this column from the preview, and then it's going to add that remove column steps to my visual and the applied steps here. If I didn't want to do that, or if I'm looking at the data after I perform an operation, I'm like, yeah, I don't like that too much, I can always go back and remove the step, and it will fix what I didn't mean to do. One thing I do want to point out, though, is that sometimes a step might have happened earlier up here that may affect a step that happened later on, or is associated with a step that happens later on. So be careful. You don't want to just go removing steps all the way up here when you may have a dozen steps. 2 or 3 of them might be dependent on that previous step, and you won't be able to perform it. So just make sure you're performing sanity checks quite often when you're doing this. One thing I do want to, just to apply a transformation step to this, is I want to get rid of this row. But I'm not going to delete the data from here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to filter it out. So if I click on the actual drop arrow here, it shows me all the values that are listed in this particular column. And this 0 value is just applying an unknown. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to filter that out. So it does a few things here. It adds it as a step, so it filtered the rows out. I can visually see that it filtered that out. And then it removed it from the preview. Now, anytime that the data ends up changing and it reloads the data in from this data flow, that's what the connection does. Then if somebody entered another 0 value into this customer key, which would be an unknown in this case, then it's going to automatically filter that data out. I don't want those zeros or NA values in there because it may skew some of the aggregations or totals that I want to apply to the column. Last thing I'm going to do is just change the name of the query to dimension customer. Just so you know, table names shouldn't have spaces or spaces in them. So you want to make sure that there's no spaces in your table names. So that's really all I'm going to do. The last thing I want to point out here is the data destination. Now, because I opened up this data flow from the Lakehouse experience, it set that as my destination automatically. But if I wanted to update the destination or create a new data destination for this, I can edit the current settings in here or select a destination, replace a method if I wanted to. I could set that in there or update the settings in the create a new Lakehouse connection to another Lakehouse if I wanted to. All right. I'm going to go ahead and publish this. And as this is publishing, a couple things are going to happen. It's going to obviously run the data flow. So now it's pulling in the data from there. It's performing whatever transformations I have, and it's going to add it as a table into my Lakehouse. So at some point, when I refresh this, that table will end up showing up here in the actual Lakehouse itself. But I'll give it some time in order for it, and it doesn't take too long for the actual data flow to publish, and then it takes it a little bit more time for it to load the data into an actual table itself. All right, nothing in there yet, but we'll see it here eventually. You can see that it's already performing a refresh because I can't hit the refresh button. And that's what it's doing. It's loading the data now into a table in my Lakehouse. There it is. So now I can see the actual data here. And I can also see the column values that are with it. Now, what happens in the Lakehouse experience? So this is another thing. Lakehouse experience versus the SQL Analytics experience. So the Lakehouse experience, I can see the actual CSV file. I can also, I can see the structured data that's associated with it. And from here, I could like open this up in a notebook, load this data in, and do something else with it. Now, that's fine if I know, Pythonic language and stuff like that. But if I'm more of a SQL person, I might not want to use Python. I might want to use SQL. So I can switch to the SQL Analytics endpoint. The table's still here, but now I can actually perform a new SQL query. And run T-SQL statements that will allow me to actually get information out of this. So now I'm performing analytics from this query itself, or from building that table in the Lakehouse. So it created a SQL endpoint or SQL Analytics endpoint that I can use SQL language to query this. By the way, these queries do get saved in here. So even if I close it out, it'll get saved as that query, and I can always come back to it and run it. Rename it from here, do what I need to with it. Now, the semantic model is created with this too. So because I have this table in there now, I could essentially start using that. It should sync that up with my, sync that table up with my default semantic model. And that updates that automatically. So from here, I could just start looking at that data visually through Power BI tools if I wanted to kind of parse through the information in that single table. Don't have a full model yet, but I do have a single table that I can visualize in here. So that essentially covers data flow. So now we have a data flow that's loading a CSV file, ingesting it directly into our Lakehouse. Hope you got some out of it. Back to the studio.
That's it, detectives. You learned how to use Dataflows Generation 2 to create and execute scalable ETL processes using Power Query Online. You also seen how to integrate data flows with other Fabric items like pipelines and lakehouses. Data flows are a powerful tool for data engineering that can simplify and automate your data transformation tasks. And remember, if you ever need help with data flows, just call me. I'm always on the query. Thanks for joining.